Today with me, we have our special guest, Karim Nagi, who is an Egyptian musician, composer, dance artist, and producer. Karim, welcome to Quartertones.
Thank you, Mikey. It's great to be here.
If somebody's just listening to the podcast, they are depriving themselves of the view, which is this incredible studio you're in. Tell us, where are you right now?
I am in my own home, and I have here my recording studio. You probably can only see half of it. I have drum sets. I have a closet full of percussion. I have a lot of stringed instruments, and this is where I teach the virtual classes. This is where I record some parts of my album, and this is where I practice.
Amazing. Where in the world are you, though?
I'm in Chicago, United States.
Amazing. So the first question is just, how did you become the type of person who would have that studio in their apartment or in their home?
Right. Well, the home versus studio distinction is important because the apartment versus home distinction is important. I lived in apartments for decades and I wasn't able to have it. And now finally I live in a home and I can. And honestly, I accumulate instruments like a lot of musicians do. And also, I want to be able to document what I'm doing as I have the ideas. So it's very important to have the recording studio. And then I really finalized everything in 2020 when I had to make the switch to virtual for my classes and performances. So that's when I really made sure that it was a nice environment, a pretty environment, an inspiring environment, and that the equipment was ready to film and I was ready to broadcast at any time.
Did you grow up in a super musical family? I mean, is this inherited or is this invented?
Oh, this is invented. Indeed, my father gave up music when he was younger, before I was born. My mother has artistic tendencies, but my Egyptian family, are primarily muhandisin, engineers. As you know, a lot of them are business people, academics, and a couple of Army personnel and Navy admirals. And I am, at this moment, the only professional artist.
There isn't an Egyptian family without some Army personnel in them.
Correct. Correct. That's right.
Did you grow up in Egypt? Did you grow up in Chicago? What's the story there?
So I came to America and as a youngster, and I went to junior high school, and college in the United States, in the Boston area, and then in the past 5 years, I moved to Chicago.
How did you find your way into the world of percussion and music and dance? I mean, this isn't a typical story. How did you do this?
It doesn't seem to be a typical story, and honestly, it is the music and the dance and the arts that really kept me connected to my culture. It's what made me always want to go back to Egypt every year. The arts are what made me want to learn about all the different Arab countries, especially that I interacted with different Arabs here in the United States. I would say that the arts are what helped me be Arab and stay connected to the Arab culture and want to contribute to it as well. I owe everything to the arts for this maintenance of the connection and the identity.
Mm. So let's just jump into some of the music.
Okay.
Before we start getting to the first interlude, let me ask you a question. Do you remember the first time you got hooked on this art form, or was there a song, was there a recording, was there a performance that sort of made you think, oh, I don't think I have a choice, I think I have to be a musician?
So Egyptians know about this activity called the Mawlid, which are birthdays of various awali saints in Islamic and Christian culture, and the Mawlid is a place of music and sort of religious activity at the same time, but also there's a lot of stuff for kids like rides and food, and so the entire district of a part of Egypt, Cairo or outside of Cairo, will be taken over by this Mawlid, Mawlid Sayyida Zainab is probably one of the most famous ones in Cairo. And as a youngster, I came across these Mawlid in Egypt, and I just was fascinated by the music and the fact that they performed mostly through these megaphones rather than a nice, refined sound system. This megaphone sound made it very raw, and a lot of people participate in doing the zikr, which is this, back and forth movement. I would say the Mawlid, the musics of the Mawlids of Cairo really are what hooked me into music, because it felt like it was something very powerful, not just a recreation, not just entertainment, but something that moved the body and moved the soul.
Very cool. Okay, let's jump right into this.
I composed an entire album. It has not yet been released. This is the first time the recording is being shared with anyone, which is here on your program of Quartertones. So this album is called Karama, and the album is all my own compositions within different styles of Arab music. So I have a style, I have a song that is the Southern Egyptian style called the Saidi. I have a song that is the Iraqi Hecha style, and that song is called Dishdasha. And then I have a song that is Moroccan rhythms and Moroccan melody, original, that's called Al-Quftan. They're all named after important garments from each region. And the song that I want to share with you today is called Thawb, and the Thawb is a piece of garment that is often worn in the Arabian Peninsula, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Yemen, Oman. And so this song is called Thawb, and it's in the style of the Khaliji music with lots of percussion. I have oud, ney, violin, and lots of percussion as well. So I'd like to share that song with you. No one outside of my studio or the musicians who performed with me have heard it yet. You are the first audience.
Okay, amazing. So let's check it out. Okay, so who is performing on that track?
These are all my bandmates here in Chicago. So we have a oud player whose name is Ronnie Mali. He's Palestinian. We have a violin player named Ahmed Rushdi, who's Egyptian. And then we have a ney player whose name is Naif Rafa, who is a Syrian. And all of them are, local Chicago musicians, immigrants to the United States. And then I played all of the percussion and clapping. And I also wrote the music. So I write it down on, staff notation, and then I present it to them and they read it, but they also personalize it as well with their own delivery and inflection.
Do you think of yourself primarily as a percussionist?
I like to think of myself as an artist with several skills, or a musician, but in terms of my strongest skill, it's definitely percussion. So it's good for me to think of myself as a percussionist when it's time to give my strongest skill forward.
Can I do an audible for a second? Can I just, since I have this like master percussionist in front of me, can I ask you just to walk us through the main percussion instruments that constitute the sort of drum orchestra of the percussion section of an Arabic orchestra?
Since you used an American football analogy of throwing an audible, then I will, yes. So I'll start with the riq. So the riq is one of the most underrated of the percussion instruments because tambourine to a lot of people is imagined to be a very simplistic instrument. So the riq, the authentic ones, I have authentic and modern ones, are made with wood and some kind of skin of a fish. And here we go with brass cymbals on the bottom. So when you hit with your fingers in various places, you get the sound. So the riq is my favorite instrument. It's also my best friend. It's been with me all the time.
What was that rhythm that you were just playing right now?
Is that terrific. I was going to go through some rhythms with the other ones, but this rhythm is called sunbati, which it goes dooms, steks, steks, dooms, steks, stooms, steks, steks, dooms, steks, dooms, stek, stek, doom. And I can play. On the second percussion instrument, all of those rhythms can be played as well. So the common name for this is darbeki, darabuka, or tabla in Egypt. And here I would hit the sound here on the edge and the center. And those are the sounds that I had previously played on the riq, which are dum and tek, the low and the high one. So here I would play the same rhythm on the tabla that I had played on the riq. And then we have the alternative sounds, like if I put my hands in different places. And now I'm starting to introduce different rhythms. So one rhythm that you will find, it's like a pan-Arab rhythm that you'll find in all of the countries, is this rhythm called maqsum, which comes from the Arabic word qasam, which means to divide or separate. So here I'm dividing and separating the rhythm to maqsum, which goes tum tek, tek, tum tek, tum tek, tek, tum. So that's the skeleton. And then we add our embellishments, our personalization. Another common rhythm all over the Arabic world is called lef or malfouf, comes from the Arabic word to roll or turn, and then a lot of people also think of it as the cabbage food, but it comes from the word left to turn. And here I would go doom, tek, tek, doom, tek, tek, low, high, low, high. And play. And depending on what part of the Arab world you're in, if you're doing dabki, like from Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, Jordan, then it wouldn't be as decorated and it would feel like this. But if I were to play the rhythm from Egypt, I would then decorate a lot more and it would sound like this. And then finally, if I were to do a version of it from, let's say, Saudi Arabia, I would add a doom on the place of the second tek, so it would sound. Doom, 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 doom. And finally, if I were to go to Iraq, I would add some dooms at the beginning to play this rhythm called the shobi. So here are the two main percussion instruments in the Arab world. We also have the big frame drum, the Daff, cymbals called the sagat. We even play drum set and drum machines these days. But these are the two, the bride and groom of the Arab percussion ensemble.
Are there any other sort of, aside from the bride and groom, what else rounds out that section?
I'm going to have to walk over to my closet. Hold on.
Walk over. I want you to open up that treasure trove.
So this one would be called, it has a couple of names depending on the Arab world. Daff, bandir, katim. In America, we call it the frame drum because in American English, we name things after what they look like sunroof and folding chair. So here is one that has strings on the inside, and this would round out the sound. So it has that nice deep sound as well.
It's
so
like
this
it has the snare on it.
Exactly, the snare on it. And if I remove the snare, like I loosened it, and the snare is what gives it sort of that biting sound. And for all of these instruments, there are ways to play it as a folklore artist versus a classical artist, to make it just generic description. So, for example, as a classic artist, I might play the fingers more. So here are the dooms. As a folklore artist, these are people who would be playing maybe standing up or playing in a wedding ceremony. So here are the hands. And then also we have a ceremonial and devotional version too, where you start doing other things with the instruments to help be part of the ritual. So for example, spinning. Or over the head. And all of those actually help with the overall feeling, the neshwa, the bliss that comes with performing music.
At almost every wedding I go to, there's a zaffe, right?
Yes.
Weddings in at least in Beirut in Lebanon, right?
There's and Egypt too, yeah, zaffa, we have them too.
And there's always the big drum.
Yes.
What would be the bass drum? What is this?
So this is called in Egypt the tabla baladi, and I believe in Lebanon it's just called the tabbil. And that is, exactly, the bass drum. We have this in the United States too as part of the marching band. And
like in New Orleans at the front line.
Yes, exactly. And forgive me, I can't, if I try to get my tabl out, my whole closet is going to fall over. But I will show you the sticks. I love afikra, but I have to make sure things don't fall over by accident. So here are the two sticks that you play with the tabbil or tabla baladi, which is you hit here for the doom sound on one side, and then this is across on this side here. And I'm just using this as an example that this would be played here. But interestingly, when you hit the other side of the tabla baladi, this one vibrates too. And this serves as the snare sound as well. So these are played with sticks when you play the big tabbil drum that you see in the dabki and the zaffa and all of these.
Are any of them tuned differently? Like, do you have to switch out the dabki in and out based off a different song because they're tuned to a different key or maqam?
I do. A lot of musicians or percussionists don't do that, but I do that. I tune them very, very carefully. The ones that have the synthetic skins, like plastic, those are easier to find a tune and keep it. But like I have this, which is, it's in the key of C. This bandir here is in the key of G. And when I record some of my albums, I tune them to the specific maqam the low note doom, I tune them to the specific maqam. But that's not something that every percussionist does. That's a special extra activity that I like, so that they ring with the music.
Okay, let me ask you a question. When you hear virtuosic players in other genres, whether let's say drummers, right, or whatever, horn player, something like that, they're usually, when they solo, they often are quoting other musicians.
Okay.
And you're listening to like you're listening to some jazz saxophonist at a club, and they'll play this little riff, and you're like, oh, that's a Coltrane quote. Oh, that's a Charlie Parker quote. Oh, he's quoting Miles Davis. That's like that famous tune.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ever quoting other percussionists when you play, let's say, any of the instruments that you've just played? Are there like famous solos on some record somewhere?
I wouldn't quote, so specifically as that, but the truth is that we all have the same vocabulary and grammar, and so there are certain things that emerge all the time, and that come out and are played quite frequently. So for percussion, for example, I've probably heard every single percussionist play tak tak boom tak tak doom tak tak doom doom tak. We don't know who the origin of it, but that becomes part of the vocabulary of our drummer.
The first time that was played, everybody freaked out, and they're like, "Oh my God, we have to do this every single."
Yeah, it's like I'm obliged, and then if you don't do it, they're like, "Well, he didn't learn everything." All right.
Yeah.
Well, so this becomes quite evident when we play melodic instruments too, because we have our maqam. Say I'm in maqam bayatis. When we do a taqseem, for example, in the Arabic music, and we have our maqam, there are quotes that aren't necessarily ascribed to specific musicians or songs, but that emanate from the maqam quite naturally, and that also have become expected among listeners. And I don't mean in a conscious way, but in a way where that becomes the character of it. Sort of like if you were in a heavy metal band, but you didn't wear a black t-shirt, they would say that, well, you don't quite get it. So in the same way here, I'm playing this one here. That is a very emblematic phrase in the scale, the maqam of Bayati. And then this one, and then going up to here. This whole climbing and ladder that we call the sayyam, the little small journey, is also very emblematic, So many people would maybe hear multiple musicians play that, and we would hope that each musician has a little bit of their own personalization. But the truth is that the maqam actually emanates certain phrases, and certain phrases feel like they belong to it. So your question about quoting, a lot of us are using the same grammar and the same vocabulary for all of our ideas.
Okay, I want to go back to your first favorite instrument. You're sort of your best friend. Can you remind me the name?
Okay. Rek. In Lebanon, you guys call it the Daff, I think.
Exactly, the Daff,
so
I was going to say.
Yeah.
If you were to think through like the 4 levels of complexity and mastery, okay? What does a beginner sound like? Somebody who's picking up a Daff at the first time, what should they be focusing on? What should be like somebody who's like 4 years into this journey? Somebody who's a very good amateur, performing amateur, and what a professional. What are the 4 levels of mastery of the Daff? What does that actually sound like, the difference?
Four levels is a good way to think about it. At the very first level, which nobody has even on the first day, which is to get the sounds. One of the main problems would be that you hit this and it always sounds like that. So here's our doom, here's our tech, and they all sound exactly the same. So the first thing you have to do is isolate the sounds. If you don't isolate the sounds, you can't make any rhythm at all. It would be like playing the piano with your forearms, and the only way to play the piano would be to hit every note at the same time, like body slamming the piano. So this is the first thing. In order to not body slam the rek, we have to get the individual sounds. So level 1 of mastery, I would say, would be individual sounds, and to be able to get the sound you want.
Can you do those sounds just for a second again?
Okay, well, I have the basic one, doom, tek, and then variations of those sounds like or, and this, and kish, and sek. And to be able to get those sounds at the time you choose to get them, meaning that I am in control of the sounds I produce rather than the instrument creating sounds and I'm chasing them. I'm controlling the sound. So that's level 1. Level 2 would be the ability to play rhythms. So you would be able to differentiate between all the different rhythms that are called upon you and be able to play them. So you would be able to play Masmoudi Kabir, you would be able to play a Saidi, and accumulation of rhythms. Level 3 is the decoration, Zaghrafat, the ability to personalize and ornament the rhythm. And ornamentation is very important. So like you, Mikey, you're wearing a t-shirt, Karim is wearing a t-shirt. They're actually even similar colors. So we have this version of the Masmoudi rhythm and that version of the Masmoudi rhythm. Both of us have the same Masmoudi, but mine is decorated. That's what differentiates one from the other. So we also want to decorate the rhythm as well. We want to ornament the rhythm. So, for example, I'm not just going, but I'm ornamenting. So this rata and brta, all of those are the ornamentation on the t-shirt. All of those are the personalization that makes the rhythm special to that moment. Level number 4 is very intangible. Level number 4 is whatever happens in your mind can be created with your instrument in hands without obstruction. I have an idea and I'm able to play it, and it does not get lost between here and here. So I have created a sikka selka, a smooth path between here and here, and that I am not getting interrupted with thought or worry or confusion. And so that will allow me to play with other musicians. That will allow me to be creative. That will allow me to author my own music, even if it's just rhythms, is having this 4th level clear path between the idea and the execution.
Okay, amazing. Amazing. So let me ask you a couple other questions.
Sure.
What's the easiest way to identify a novice? Like you go to a wedding, there's a band. What are the easiest ways where you're like, oh, they got to work on their craft?
The absolute first thing, and I'd like to preface this by saying that as I get older and as I do this longer, I try to be far less critical. You know, nobody needs to hear, some grand classical piece of composition in the middle of a wedding when the bride and groom are dancing. You know, like everything has its place. Everything is useful. So I try to not be judgmental and think that music has a hierarchy or some kind of elitism. Elitism doesn't work for me anymore. But to answer your question, is that I listen and try to see if they get the sound and the rhythm that they wanted to get. So there's many times when it's kind of obvious with this, the drum excites the person so much. They get so excited and they run with it. And this takes over, right? This instrument takes over them. And then the number one thing that happens is it speeds up, because excitement, we want it to end. I don't know why it speeds up. Wouldn't you want excitement to last? When you speed up, it ends sooner. So that's the number one is excitement, and the sounds start to dissipate. So the drum controls them. So if I feel that the person is controlling the drum, is controlling their instrument, that's how I can tell the difference between a novice and Kabir, somebody who's experienced.
Okay, amazing. Before we go to the last tune, I want to ask you about the same way I asked you about the different levels. What is your go-to advice for somebody who wants to start? Young or old. Somebody listening to this podcast, whether they are a 12-year-old in Alexandria or a 65-year-old in Berlin. What's your advice?
My advice would be to choose an instrument that you have the ability to find an instructor for. There are a lot of instruments that fascinate people that we don't have readily available instructors, like say the qanun, for example, or in many cases the oud. There are a lot of oud players in the world, but maybe there are none that are accessible. So find an instrument where there is an instructor that can help. And then I would pick an instrument that completes an ensemble or completes a group of friends that are already there. So for example, if every one of my friends plays percussion, do I also need to learn percussion and then have us be some percussion gang that is just so loud and overtakes? Maybe it would be great to learn singing or learn another instrument. So do an instrument that is not there in the ensemble or in the group of friends that are already there.
Be
and
the
then
bassist.
Quite finally, yes, exactly. Diversify. And finally, I would say pick an instrument that excites you and that makes you want to practice, because the only way to improve is through desire. In every activity in this world, we have to find time for it. And if we're forcing ourselves to find time for it, then those are the ones that usually dissipate because we can't find time for it. It has to be something so passionate that you want to do, so that you're dead tired at 7:30 in the morning, but you practice. You're demoralized from work or relationship, but you practice. Even when your time and desire or daily life have impeded you so much, you want to practice it. That's the only way to improve, is by practicing. So you want an instrument that you have a strong desire to do, regardless of your surrounding impediments.
I love it. Okay, I actually have a different last question.
You can have as many last questions as you need.
What place has the best Arabic percussion?
Honestly, the Arab world has musicians and artists and percussionists like the movie theater has popcorn. So there are so many, and it's infinite. And a lot of times we refer to the best as someone who's very natural. So, for example, you may find someone who is technically very good, but doesn't feel natural, doesn't make music so availably. So in that case, we want the general audience seems to respond best to someone who plays in a very natural way, that they're not struggling. So in that case, you want to look to cities where there's so many people playing, and it's such a natural part of life that it's something that they're not struggling with. I've noticed in many cases that this is the country of Morocco, and all around Morocco in cities like Fes and Marrakech and Chefchaouen and all of these countries, where all of these cities, where so many people are playing percussion all the time, and they're not even professionals, but they're so good at rhythm and technique, and they're doing it so frequently that it's very natural. So I believe that, Morocco is a great source of percussion, and also Syria, Lebanon, Egypt. I can go ahead and name all 23 countries just to be fair. But what I'm interested in is listening to someone who plays naturally, someone who creates the emotion and is not struggling when they play music. That's when it becomes very convincing.
Some of these basic rhythms that we talked about, as you're mentioning them, you're sort of contrasting Lebanese, Syrian, Egyptian, you mentioned Saudi Arabian. If you were to talk about a place like Morocco, how does that contrast with a place like iqa'at, for example, where there's such geographic diversity?
Absolutely. The Arab world has an umbrella and a lot of things that connect us, but there is a lot of specificity to each region and each country. And so in the case of percussion, it has a lot to do with the repertoire. In the case of songs, it has a lot to do with the repertoire. What are the songs that people are playing and listening to? And what are the famous songs that everybody knows? And the music and the percussion that goes with those songs are what become the dialogue of that culture. So, we have our famous songs in Morocco, we have our famous songs in Egypt, we have our famous songs in Iraq, famous songs in Beirut and Lebanon. And these songs are what people play along to. And so the way that percussion is used in those famous songs becomes that dialect of that region.
So are there famous songs in Morocco that are that you have to specifically learn?
Yes. I mean, there are
can you give an
Egyptian
example?
musicians who have never learned a Moroccan song or have ever learned a Syrian song for that matter. Me living here in the United States and interacting with all the different Arabs, Moroccans, Algerians, Palestinians, Syrians, Jordanians, Mauritanians even, I'm obliged to learn a wider range of music. And so I have had to learn, this song called Sidi Mansour from Algeria, and Allah Allah Ya Baba, and I also had to learn these songs from Moroccan called Halalo Halaili, and all of these this other one called Dorbiha Shibani Dorbiha. And I have to learn them, and I want to learn them because I want to have something for everyone in the audience.
Amazing. Okay, let's listen to the last tune that I think you're going to perform.
Even though I have the most experience with percussion, I'm very passionate about the Buzuq and melody and Maqam in Arab music. And I love playing this. And there's an art that we have, it's called Taqseem, taqaseem for plural. And this is when the performer goes on a short journey with improvised music. There is a pattern, but a lot of it is improvised within the pattern. And the Buzuq is an instrument that can only have 2 sets of strings, but I have a Buzuq that's made for me that has 4 sets of strings, which allows me to modulate more frequently and do different excursions within the music. So I'm going to play for you a Taqseem on the Maqam Huzam, which starts on a quarter tone.
Amazing. What do the four strings add? Is it just makes it a richer sound?
The four strings, I'm able to go to different tonalities. So, here, many Buzuq would have this string and this string. Just, But with having now a low A, high C.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
I'm able to go even lower and even higher. I'm able to play vertically, up and down, instead of just left and right. I'm able to go up and down, and I'm able to start and have a tonic from different qarar, different starting points.
Gotcha. So it's not that you are quadrupling each single string.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. Yes, it's sort of like the difference between a 5-string bass and a 4-string bass.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
The last question I'll ask you two more questions actually before we wrap up. The second to last is who is on the sort of in hip hop we like to say top 5 dead or alive. Who is on the top 5 list for you when it comes to Arabic percussionists? And if there aren't 5 that make the mark, I'll broaden it to musicians.
If we could broaden it to musicians, and they're all dead, so I would say that the 5 that, in my case, have influenced me in every situation, and who influence also others, so that's not just me enjoying them. I would have to say number 1 is Sheikh Said Darwish as a composer and singer and even an actor. I relate to him for being those. So Said Darwish, Kulthum is very important for all of us, for our vocabulary and our repertoire, and also the idea of virtuosic singing. I would say that I would put the Rahbani brothers and this whole Rahbani group of composers and lyricists together as top 5. And then I would, the last 2 is very interesting. I think it starts to become more personalized at this. I very much like Farid al-Atrash as somebody who composes and has a fantastic voice, but is very versatile. And now I get to have a 5th person, but I want to pick someone that everybody would agree with. Yet I know that we are living in this Arab world where we argue even when we agree. So I'm going to just say something very, very personal on this one. And I'm going to say that the person who influenced me so much for music, who died very recently, who's actually from Beirut, Lebanon, and is not going to be known to everyone who listens, called Bassam Saba. Bassam Saba, he played Nay for a couple of Fairuz songs, and he's a composer, and he passed away. He had COVID. He died with COVID. But he taught me something for music. He kept asking me, what is the meaning of what I just played? The meaning. And this is an important point, is that everything I play, I want it to have meaning. I want it to be a story. I want it to be a complete thought, not just an exercise in sound, not just an exclamation in thought or ego. I want it to be a complete thought, and I want it to have meaning. So for me, my 5th person taught me that music has to have meaning, that every statement of music rhythm needs to have a meaning.
I love it. I love that. Absolutely. Well, that sort of answers even the last question I was going to say, which was, what are some albums that you think people should pick up? I mean, I remember when I was young, this question is very useful for students listening who want to get into stuff. What are some albums that you think somebody who loves maybe contemporary music from the Arab world, but doesn't know sort of the classical repertoire, what are albums that they should go pick up?
I highly recommend this song. It's the whole album is one song. It's called Alf Layla wa Layla, Kalsoom. And the entire album, the entire song is 45 minutes. Maybe most people just know the introduction, the muqaddama, dun, 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 da, da, dun, da, dun. But the entire song has so many beautiful ideas, so many rhythms, so much beautiful orchestration in how the orchestra is used to create different dynamics. And also the most beautiful thing about this album is how they use maqam and how they use melody to emphasize the different lyrical sections of the song. So when she starts to talk about, the loved one she hasn't seen for a long time, or that she's, thinking about them again, the maqam and the melody really emphasizes. So I think Alf Layla wa Layla Kalsoom, this is a madrasa. This is an entire school, just that recording. And then I would also recommend very much any of the original recordings of Sheikh Said Darwish, because he has so many kinds of music. He has nationalistic music. He has muwashhat. He has taqatik, light songs. And a lot of the songs on those recordings are songs that he debuted in theater and plays. So he puts on accents and he plays characters. And this gives you a very great idea of how music can create characters and create meaning through its delivery.
Karim, thanks so much for joining us and for performing so much. It's such a pleasure having you on.
Mikey, thank you for your great questions and for including me in this. And I've been listening to the program, quite repeatedly since you found me, and I'm really get inspired by a lot of the guests. So it's a nice honor to be included. Thank you.